The historical background for the first reading from the book of Isaiah extends all the way from the 8th century before Christ down to the 6th century. In that time period, we see the utter collapse of a nation. The northern empire is routed by the Assyrians. And then Jerusalem itself is attacked by the Babylonians and carried them off to captivity. And that's where the reading, our first reading, comes from, when the prophet says that Jerusalem will no longer be silent. He goes on to say that Jerusalem will no longer be forsaken. It will no longer be desolate, its land, but it will be frequented. It will be my delight, the delight of Yahweh. And then the reading ends up by saying that Yahweh loves Jerusalem. He loves the people as a young man loves his bride. And that sets the tone, that reading, for the gospel, which is about a marriage feast. And the remarkable thing about the marriage feast is it presents Jesus as a guest at the wedding. But really, he's not the guest at all. He's the bridegroom. He is the one who's going to marry, in a way, the Jewish people. He is the one who's going to find delight in them. And he's going to love them the way a young man would love his bride. And it goes on to talk about that, and to talk about how water is changed into wine. To the Jewish people, they must have remembered how at the time of Moses, before the Exodus, one of the miracles there was the water was turned into blood as a prelude to their Exodus, their liberation from Egypt to come back to the land. He was foretelling the resurrection itself. And then in the reading of the gospel, it talks about his hour had not yet come. By his hour, he meant his death, resurrection, and ascension. The hour of bringing humanity back to God. But the hour would begin at a wedding feast. The joy of Christ loving his people. How powerful that is. But it's more than just Christ loving his people. It's Christ loving all humanity. And not only all humanity, the entire world. Is Christ loving each one of us. That he loves us the way Yahweh loves Jerusalem, as a young man loves his bride. So Christ loves us. And when we go from where the Israelites were in their fall, back to their restoration in Jerusalem, when we in our lives go that, then we realize that we have gone from water to wine. And that wine, of course, tells us something about the wine that we'll have at the heavenly banquet in heaven. That there we will sit around the table with the Lord in eternity. It will be a wedding feast. Everybody enjoying themselves. Everybody having a little bit of wine. That's the image of what heaven is all about. And the marriage feast at Cana points to all that. But we also know that in marriages, there's a time when the bride or the groom will feel some distance from their spouse. We experience that in life. And of course, Christ himself would experience it during his passion and his death. How he felt distant from his disciples, distant from the people that he loved. And he even felt distant from God the Father himself. Why have you forsaken me, he said on the cross. But that is only for a while. The passion and the death will be over, and there'll be a resurrection. There's another image in the scriptures about not pouring wine into old wineskins. That if you do so, the old wineskins will burst and you lose all the good wine. It happens often that when people go to the Eucharist, you have the wine of the Eucharist, but the vessel to contain it is so filled with secularism. It's filled in many ways with skepticism, critical thinking, doubts. It's filled sometimes with the boredom of life. And that boredom of life can be so powerful that even the wine of the Eucharist doesn't make any difference. Young people will attend Mass, and sometimes older people, I get nothing out of it. Somehow the new wine there is poured into the old wineskins, and the new wine is lost. So what do we do to make sure that we have new wineskins to receive the great wine of the Eucharist? Mary tells us in the Gospel, do whatever he tells you. She tells the servants there, do whatever he tells you. Do the will of God. And if you search for the will of God in your life, you'll have new wineskins. And you'll be able to take in the new wine. The new wine that promises you so much about life. But ordinarily, we drink water through the day, through the years. But there's a rich wine for us. And the bridegroom Christ is offering us that wine. He even searches out after us. He tries to woo us the way a young man woos his bride-to-be, because he wants us to have the best wine possible, the wine to be one with him and one with the Trinity itself.